meeting of the Westwood Planning Board. And we'll start off the meeting with a roll call vote. And I just ask people to raise their hand so that if anyone's watching it, they know who's who. Or we also have our names on the screen, but those are kind of hard to see on the television, I think. So I'll just go through a roll call vote. And I'd like to welcome Mr. McCusker back to the Planning Board. This is his first meeting after he was appointed last night. So we'll just go down I'll go down the list here. And I'm Dave Atkins and Mike McCusker.
Yep.
And Chris Pfaff.
Here.
Robert Gotti.
Here.
And Debbie Conant. Great. And we also have our town planner, Abby McCabe, and town council, Pat Ahern. And Jessica Cole is our recording secretary. So welcome everyone to this meeting of the Westwood Planning Board. All meetings of the Planning Board are recorded by Westwood Media Center and are broadcast live on local cable television, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also available on the Westwood Media Center YouTube channel and are being live streamed. If you're having any trouble logging into Zoom, please go to zoom.us, click on Join Meeting, and enter the meeting ID of 871-7647-1215. While people are unmuted, please turn off your cell phone ringers to eliminate background noise. We will begin the meeting with only the board members and the planning staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we'll unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking because this helps to minimize the background noise. Briefly to outline our process, planning board meetings consist of 3 types of agenda items. We consider applications that have been submitted to the board. We conduct public hearings where there's a public comment portion required. And we have other applications that are not a formal hearing. The public will have an opportunity to comment at the board's discretion. And third, we review administrative items where board members discuss issues and deal with items such as approval of meeting minutes, planning future agendas, and hearing updates from the planning department staff and other boards. Prior to each agenda item, the chair will announce the item and try to provide some descriptive context. For applications, the chair will invite the applicant to address the board, give a presentation summarizing what is being requested. Board members have already received the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them, and so they may then ask follow-up questions during and following that presentation. Oftentimes we'll have the town planner or other professional staff or outside experts who would have comments to provide to the board and some questions on that. And if there's a public hearing portion to it, the board will proceed to public comments. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting or from a telephone dial-up. We can hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to these portions of the meeting, I'll remind everyone of the process, raising your hand or pressing *9 if you are on the phone. Following these public comment sections, the board would deliberate, make a decision, or continue the hearing to a future date. All of our remote meetings during COVID here, they require that votes be done by roll call. So when a motion and second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion and then proceed to a roll call vote and restate the results of the vote in case there's any doubt. Tonight on our agenda, we have one public hearing item and we have a few discussion items. So the first item, I'm just going to kind of highlight this. The first item will be a continuation of last meeting's minor modification request related to the Islington redevelopment. Then we have a EIDR, an environmental impact design review public hearing related to Southwest Park. And then we will move on to a discussion of the zoning amendment articles that are going to be submitted to the town meeting coming up. So that's an overview of things. Abby, are there any additional items or changes to the agenda?
No changes.
All right. So we will begin by moving to the first item on the agenda, which is the continuation of the discussion of 282, 296 Washington Street. This is the redevelopment of the Islington area and specifically the ICC, the Islington Community Center Church building with the design of the windows and stuff. So I believe that I see that Mr. Petruzziello is here from Supreme Development. If you would like to introduce this or give us an update, and then we would have a discussion about that. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I think Mike McKay should be on as well.
I am. I just
project
I
architect.
got lost for a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
great.
on.
Go ahead, Mike. I think this is, yep.
Sorry, it's just my Wi-Fi just shut off. I'll just go through it quick, Giorgio. So last month we had a few items on the agenda for review, and one of the a design item came up as far as one of the windows, how it related at the gable end of the new church. If we could, Nora, Abby, I'm sorry, I see Nora's on it too. If Abby, if you could bring up the drawings, that would be great. So this was the original, and it was a round top window with windows on either side, and we needed this to provide egress for the bedroom. It wasn't on the original design. The original design had a round window, and it was brought up that it just felt a little heavy, and I immediately saw it and felt that I thought we could do better. So we prepared two sketches. The first one was, I don't know if I have a favorite, but the first one would be my favorite. It's a very simple window. It's called a French casement. It allows, there's a mullion in the middle, so the casement windows would actually open up. So it's a 4 foot wide, 6 foot high window, very simple arch top, and it gives us necessary egress and light for the bedroom. So this one is I almost thought of it out on the meeting, the hearing last week. Yeah, that's Abby circling around it. So this is our, say, option one. Option two is a more vertical version of the original. It just had an arch top with casements on either side, 3 equal casements. This does give us a little bit more light, but again, I think it's kind of obvious it's a little heavy. This is a quick proposal. I think the middle one satisfies the code, satisfies the light in the bedroom, and I think it really works well with the original design intent. So that's it. Unless Giorgio, you want to add anything?
No, I think that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. McKay. Any questions from planning board members? Ms. Conant? You're muted.
I know, I'm trying to figure this out. So they're both windows are the same height and the same width? Is that correct?
The item one is actually on option one, the French casement. They're both the same window. It actually opens up. There's nothing in the middle when it does open. It's completely open, so it does allow the egress width without more mullions, more width. But they're both the same size window, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, anybody?
I think they were the only things we were looking at really were the design relative to what was originally there and whether or not it would provide appropriate egress and light. And it sounds like they're satisfied with egress and light. Am I interpreting that right, Mike?
That's correct.
All right, I think that or Mr. Paff, did you have a question or comment? You are muted.
You're in mute.
Sorry about that. It sounds like, Mike, are you proposing that option one? That's what you're requesting from the board? But you would do option two?
No, we would do the original, we would scrap. We would we would do.
No, not the
second-
original. You're proposing option one, but option two is something, if the board wants that more, you would consider option two. But what you're
Absolutely.
proposing to us is option one, it sounds like.
That's correct. I think option one is better.
Okay. I agree. I think it's more vertical. It's more in line with the other windows at the same level, and being right below the steeple, I think it's far less cluttered. It looks a lot cleaner and streamlined.
Yeah, that's, I agree with that. So I think is there any further discussion, or is that everybody like option one? All right, so procedurally, we approved this. Well, we determined that it was a minor modification at our last hearing. It's probably a good idea to go ahead and to vote on this, as we had this one thing out as a condition, and I think they've addressed that. So I think we could have a motion to approve the minor modification with this window design. If someone would like to make that motion.
I'll make, sorry, go ahead, Rob. All right, I'll make a motion that we accept option one as requested by the developer for the window options in the gabled end of the East Street side of the, I don't know what building we're calling this, but what the address is. Sorry, just kind of cut off there on the
282, 296 Washington Street.
282, thank you. 282, 296 Washington Street, East Street side. It's a long window,
Second that.
sorry.
Okay, there's a motion from Mr. Path, seconded by Mr. Gotti. We're not in a public hearing. Do we need to, would it be helpful to hear any public comment on this, or? I'll just throw it out there. If anyone who's attending has a very brief comment they would like to make, I would take that now, or take a Q&A question. But I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions being asked. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote by roll call. Mr. Path,
Yes.
Ms. Conant,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for the suggestion. I thought it would be appropriate today. I think good news, the steeple of the old ICC, the church, Giorgio removed it with a crane, and it came off in great shape. And it's really in perfect shape, and it's going to be refurbished and put back up at some point, hopefully in, I don't know how many months, Giorgio will say, but several months, but it came off in perfect shape. So it's good news.
Mike, was there a bell inside there?
There is a bell inside.
Are we
I
keeping
rang
that
it
too?
today. That's gonna stay inside the steeple, yes.
Okay.
So does the cord to ring the bell, does that go into the condo?
The
Yeah,
master
we're
bedroom,
gonna put a big rope in the master bedroom that they ring it once in a while.
It'd be an extra perk.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. And
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
You too.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
all right, the next item on our agenda is 18 to 20 Southwest Park, a limited environmental impact design review. This is a public hearing, and I believe that they are proposing a childcare center and a playground, and so we will use the applicant here to make a presentation. I see Mr. Hodges there. Great, then you can go ahead and start us off.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for allowing us to
talk about what we're doing. We're excited to expand. We've been at 18 to 20 Southwest Park since 2017. I've loved the space, and we're expanding the church to include Monday through Friday preschool because everything was interior-wise demolished. The only in 2017 and refurbished. The only thing that we are requesting to do is to add a playground per EEC guidelines with the state. And so, yeah, that's part of the proposal. So Abby, I'm not sure what you would like to show first or discuss, but I can do whichever one you would like to. Want to address certainly the parking and as well as the actual plan for the playground as well.
Yeah, I think if you could, and I think safety, anything that relates to safety.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Abby, do you just want me to talk through it?
Sure. Can you see my screen right now with the
I can.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it under the Southwest Park material?
Oh, sorry. Can you not see it?
No,
I haven't
we're
opened it.
we're seeing your window with all your documents.
Yeah. All I can see is,
Okay.
is just that PDF. There you go. Yep.
Let me try it again.
I can talk through it as she's pulling it up. Couple of things that I would say that you've already seen in the proposal. Right now, we have 51 spaces that are allocated around the building. The spaces that the playground would take up are only 4, so thus the net is showing 47. The company that we hired to do the interior would be the company we're hiring to do the playground as well. They have done this many times with building playgrounds with the appropriate construction all the way around the playground, putting the appropriate bollards up for protection, separated of course by a vinyl fence. And so it would be inside the spaces where are allocated in the drawing in the submission. So it's 1,900 square feet, 1964, I believe is the exact dimension. Yeah. Where those black lines are, that was, it still is currently a loading dock. We do not use it as a loading dock, but the loading dock would be removed. That's why per the last time this particular plot plan was completed, it was just a loading dock. And so per town records, it's only a loss of 4 spaces. So that would be where it is. That's correct. That's 19, just below 2,000 square feet. Well within the appropriate limitations or expectations that the EEC has. The EEC requires 75 square feet per child. We're going to have a maximum of 20 at a time. So that's a required 1,500 square feet. We'll be right below 2,000. We could go larger, but we're not going to. So maximum of 20, and that's well within the state guidelines as well. I was also asked to submit some information regarding, I don't know if, pull that other one up, the other document. Yeah, there's the drawing that's showing the bollards and the necessary egress points. That door that is entering into the sanctuary is existing, of course, right. And then the loading dock is the dotted line between where Abby is. Yeah, that's correct. That's the current, loading dock that would be removed, saw cut, and everything would be removed there, and the appropriate flooring with turf would be put down, again, in guidelines with what the state requires for that. They've seen this already. Of course, they take, as they take their approval and their cues size-wise from what we have already submitted to them. And they said, yes, this is the appropriate size, and they'll come out and work with us to make sure what is installed, particularly with the construction company, is in approval with them as well. So, so from a parking standpoint, just to be clear on this, because I know parking, yep, there you go. From a parking standpoint, because we have a small staff, we do not utilize these spaces during the week very, very much. And so we have 2 full-time staff members that utilize these spaces. There's plenty of parking. Of course, being a preschool, one of the initial concerns could be the drop-off area. On Sunday mornings, we'll have on a low number anywhere between, well, of course, pre-COVID, to be clear, anywhere between 170 to 250. On Easter Sunday, we had north of 300 people, and we have no parking issues with the shared parking agreement. So parking wise, we'll have a staff of 7 for this preschool. So there's plenty of room. The other question that came on the site was concerning drop-off and drop-off pacing. We will have a max of 40 kids. By estimation, that's going to be 35 to 40 cars, of course, because we may have a family that has multiple children. So 35 to 40 cars, there's going to be early drop-off. We have not set down the exact times of the early drop-off, but often early drop-off can be 30 minutes before the regular time. So I estimate the staggered drop-off time will be around 30 to 45 minutes of 35 to 40 cars. So same thing with the pickup. The pickup time will have a late pickup as well for parents. And so you're talking 35 to 40 cars on a Sunday morning. We'll have certainly far more than that. And I bring that up because our team, our volunteers and our staff are used to making sure that we protect the safety of children and parents as they drive around the building, and obviously as they enter and exit the building. Chris is also on the call. I don't know if Chris would add anything to that, but you can. But if there's any questions or if there's anything else you would like for me to address, Abby, is there anything at this time that you want me to point out?
Mr. Gotti, did you have a question? Jump in.
Yeah, just looking at the aerial of the building, is there, and the plan that you had, is there handicap accessibility out to that playground area? It looks like the only accessibility looks to be at the other end of the building. So do they have to go like to that end of the building and then all the way around to get there?
Yeah, good question. I did touch base with the EEC on that to say, is it required for handicap accessibility to enter directly into the space? And they said that there's not. We do have handicap accessibility. You're right. If you're looking at that aerial shot, if you would call it on the east side of the building where the playground would be, even though it was turned, if you're looking north to south, it's to the east side of the building. We have handicap accessibility on our main entrance on the opposite side and on the back side. So they could enter, or they could exit on that north side of the building and go around. So yeah, good question. There are 2 handicap accessibilities in the building. As you know, the front side of that building is the owner, Rich Lee, OIC Financial. So of our 3 sides of the building, 2 sides will have the handicap and the other side will be the playground. But yeah, good question.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Dave, I had one.
I think you got your hand up first. Why don't you go first? Debbie?
Who had it up first?
Sorry about that.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
quick
Deb.
question. So you're reducing the parking spaces by 4, is that what you said?
Correct.
And you have an agreement for shared parking, but that's only on Sundays. So will you still satisfy the requirement based on that?
Yeah, that's also a good question. It does satisfy the requirement. I don't only bring that up because one of you brought that up as a comment on the shared parking agreement, which is a good question. The only need the church has is on Sunday morning. So this particular use of the building is only Monday through Friday. So, and the Monday through Friday use will be considerably less. So the shared parking agreement will still stand. We don't have a need to change or modify that at all because the shared parking agreement really is only for Sunday. We also talked, I talked to the insurance company and then Suburban, and then we also have, we don't have this, we have a verbal with 47 at Southwest Park. So we've utilized some of those spaces on Sunday morning, but they know that there's not a need for it Monday through Friday. So
What about, sorry, go ahead.
What
What
are
about
the numbers actually? I think
functions or events or? where
yeah, so
parents
what we have done with Suburban and Telemon is give them a heads up and say, hey, Tuesday night, we're having a gathering of 40 folks. We just wanted to let you know. We have not had any event that's required additional spaces. Sunday morning requires additional spaces because that's when we have the most people. But when we do we've done like a Friday night movie night, and we've given Rich at Suburban a heads up. Hey man, I just want to let you know. It's just more of a communication. Even though we're not using his spaces, we just let him know. And so we've just really communicated when we've had events and things going on midweek. And of course, the church will have to continue to do that with the preschool, where we will, of course, not double book the space. When the church will utilize the building, the preschool will not have access to it, and vice versa.
Okay. One final question. You said that you only need to put bollards on the corner sides of the playground.
They're all the way around it. That's
Okay.
I think that's a good question. I think on the drawing, there's a number between it. Maybe it's 6 feet. It's whatever the state requires is what
Okay.
they've done. But that's good. And then Haynes, they have done multiple playgrounds with multiple different towns. And I asked them those. I said, is that the same? Because yeah, it's the state regulation. And so what's drawn is what's required for
So there'll
car
be
safety.
multiple ones. Okay, good. Because of all
Oh,
the
yeah.
parking, the way it was set up. Okay. Thank
Correct.
you.
Yep.
Thanks. Mr. Paff?
Yeah, can you tell me the hours of operation for this daycare, Monday through Friday?
We have not nailed that down yet, but I believe it's going to be around 8 to 4:30 or so. But there's going to be an early drop off and a late pickup as well. So we just haven't nailed that down, to be really clear with you. The reason we haven't nailed it down, I think a couple of different reasons, is understanding the market of who signs up and what their needs are. Some preschools that we've connected with, they don't have early drop off because of their particular clients and the families that they serve. And some have a really big need for that. And so we just have not nailed that down. One reason we have not hired the full-time director yet. I'm the site coordinator. I work at Encounter Church. And so we're the umbrella, per the state language, the umbrella company of the preschool. We're really going to take our cues from the director, because as you may know from preschools that are regulated through the EEC, they have certain requirements. And so those are very soft hours. Wish I had more clear hours, but we're going to lean on the director for that.
Understood. You're still creating your market.
Yep.
The reason I asked the question was I noticed you were looking for a waiver of exterior lighting, and I had a concern of December, January. It's dark, obviously, quite early, and if kids are outside at that time, it just seems like that's going to be a really dark part of the building. And looking at those pictures, it looks like there are lighting fixtures already existing on the side of the building, and I'm just wondering if it might make sense at this time to change them to light up the space, if it works for what you're doing. But I know when my kids were in daycare, I picked them up at 5 sometimes in December, and it was pitch black, and we needed that lighting. And, I know it's cold and they may not be outside at that time, but it seems like it might give you some flexibility to change those security lights that are on now to other lights that shielded, so you're not affecting other buildings or something like that. But
yeah, it's good, Chris. I agree with you completely. In fact, I've already told the construction company we want them to look at it, and I told the building owner I want them to look at it. Particularly, the reason I requested a waiver was because of the requirement for a lighting review. I didn't think that was necessary, because I believe the power of those lights with some additional change could really light it up very well. I don't remember the illumination requirements, but I remember reading that per Westwood and per the state. I called a bunch of preschools. I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, well, the requirement is 30 minutes in the morning, at least 30 minutes. Not that we want to give them the minimum, because the more outside time, the better. 30 in the morning, 30 in the afternoon. And really most preschools, I think maybe 5 out of 6 or so that I talked to, they utilize that last 30-minute window in the afternoon right before it gets dark. So I agree. We will look into that for sure, because we want to have, good lighting back there. It's fairly decent right now, but I would think it needs to be a little bit stronger for safety purposes. So.
Okay.
I have a few questions. What is your plan so far for a drop off and pickup? How is it going to work? Are the parents going to come in, park, and then walk the children into the preschool, or are there going to be employees to meet them in the parking lot? either way, we're gonna have some striped lines out there to, for, you know, telling everyone which way to go and the such.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. We will have staff. It'll be staff regulated, just like schools and the mandates are. There are some guidelines and suggestions. Well, there's a guideline section of expectations of exterior presence, and then there are suggestions by the state. We will be outside. Our staff will be outside, and it will be a mobile pickup. There won't be a need for parents to come in. There will be an option for parents to come in, of course, but there will not be a need for parents to come in. It will be a car drop off with staff presence outside. On Sunday mornings, we already utilize cones to protect kids from running over to Suburban with all the vans and work vans that they have over there. And so we'll continue to utilize cones for sure, for safety purposes. Good.
Okay, yeah, I just think that's gonna be your biggest hurdle, is getting down with a solid plan of how to get these kids in and out of there every day.
Yeah.
Another question I have is, you're gonna surround the play area with a 6-foot privacy fence. So I would suggest, in the very minimum, security lights in there.
Okay.
And do you have any services during the week?
We do not.
Okay, so it's strictly gonna be the strictly gonna be the daycare, the preschool
Correct.
operating during the week?
Mm-hmm. We have utilized, just to be clear on that end, we've utilized the building in the evenings during the week, but particularly those are for small classes, small groups, maybe counseling. But we will not be holding services midweek.
Okay. And you say you're gonna early drop off? So you foresee people arriving for basically over the course of an hour in the morning?
Right.
And how about pickup at night?
Same. I've seen, again, I want to take our cues from the director because of the director level experience that's needed. They'll make those calls. I've seen anywhere between a 30-minute window to an hour and a half. And it really does depend on the market. One in Newton that I looked at was an hour and a half both ways. And so they average 30 cars over a 3-hour period, right? And so I'm like, oh my, that's incredible. So really have to be flexible depending on the need. While some preschools are a little bit hard line, no, this is our drop off time. And this, I think we're gonna be a little bit more flexible. And again, we're capping, the building can handle more. We're choosing to cap our space at 40. So we will only have a total of 40, and we have more than that on Sunday morning. So just to give you encouragement, the last 3 years, we've managed a lot more than that, kid-wise and parent-wise. And again, having 180 to 240 on a regular basis on a Sunday morning. And we have a large percentage of those as young families. And so we feel pretty good about the traffic flow. This will be different, of course, because it's dropping off at one spot and managing that flow. But we see it being really spread out. On a Sunday morning, all those cars show up within a 20-minute window.
Okay, and one final question. The bollards, you say they're gonna be surrounding the playground area, and they are gonna surround the playground area. Are they gonna be interlinked between any bars or any such to keep anything from passing through two bollards per se? I see you have some parking spaces that come up onto what would that be, the north side of the building, that could, you know, push into the playground area.
Right.
I think maybe we might want to think about some guardrails or more bollards at that location to keep cars from pushing out of those spaces towards the playground area.
I can ask what the requirements are and what Haynes would suggest there. I don't see anything in the drawings on anything between them, but I do know, of course, if a car hits head on, they can't go between them because the spacing of the bollards is of course more narrow than a standard small vehicle. However, if you turn it a certain angle, yeah, it could come in between them a little bit. But I have not seen myself where bollards have anything that connects them, so I'm not. I can't really speak to that. But we will make sure on all the entire perimeter that it is 100% safe.
Okay,
I
thank
did
you
ask
very
Tom Haynes and I asked the state those spaces that you're referring to, Mike, to make sure. I'm like, do we have to do we need to extend the kid space on this? He goes, no, we build these all the time up to parking spaces. He goes, just keep your eyes out and start looking around the different playgrounds. You're going to see parking spaces right up to it. He goes, but they require certain things. And these size parking lots and some town playgrounds, as you know, they just have chain link fences. And so he goes, this one's going to require bollards all the way around it. So yeah, I hear your concern and I share that as well.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. I had a couple of follow-up things. So can you describe the drop-off plan? Will the cars circle the building, or would they pull in, drop off, and pull out?
Yeah, we've been doing that's another great question too. And I see maybe Abby, if after I answer this or these few questions, Chris was going to share. And Chris is the lead pastor at Encounter Church, by the way. He's on the call as well. We have been practicing that one way since 2017. Yeah, it's super important. We have volunteers present on Sunday morning to not allow people to back out and come in when we have multiple services. That's a traffic flow issue as well. And so we keep it all one way. We already have pre-printed one-way signs, and we can continue to utilize those until those parents will get into a rhythm and understand the expectation pretty quick. We won't have first-time guest preschoolers, right? Like you do first-time guests on Sunday morning. So we keep those signs out to keep the one-way flow. So it will remain one way.
And I think just again to the bollards, very important that, I'd like to see where they exactly are, but it's, the whole idea of the car shouldn't be able to slip between the bollards. The parking spaces, we're thinking about, it's not like someone's going to be coming off of the highway and crashing into the playground, but someone could be parked and they have the car in reverse and they don't realize it and they hit the gas and it goes back and stuff. So thinking through all of those things, I know you're doing that, but that's, I think, the critical safety stuff. And like with respect to Mr. Paff's questions about the lighting, I think, we'd like to know, what the plan is for that. I think having security lighting, so that just for your own protection at night, if someone drives through there, they don't want to, run into the bollards or something, or, that kind of thing. I think knowing specifically what, I don't know that we need a full exterior lighting plan with like measuring the lumens everywhere and everything, but I think it's clear that we'd like to know that there is lighting, that kind of what type of lighting it is, that it complies with our lighting guidelines, so that things are down, the light is focused down and not up, although this is on the side of the building next to the highway, right? So it is there. Okay. Let's see.
On that note, Dave, we should just Mike reminded me of this. The whole area should be lit up. There shouldn't be shadows created in corners where, everything should be visible, if kids are in there. So if you're going to light it up, the whole area, I think, needs to be lit up so you don't have darkened shadow corners in the play area.
Yeah. I will certainly, I'll add that to our list with our construction company. We'll make sure, because I agree with everything that's been said.
Did Abby, were there any staff comments that we need to bring up, or?
Maybe I would just ask Jason or Chris, if you know, what is the exact spacing that you're showing right now on the between the bollards? According to the plan you submitted, it looks like it might be 12 feet between. I mean, I would recommend closer, 4 to 6 feet, as some of the planning board members mentioned. Other staff comments that we got, public safety, the police department did also say they would like to see, something substantial, a substantial barrier such as Jersey barriers or those large bollards to stop a vehicle. Engineering asked for a more detailed site plan that would really show a close-up of the area prepared by an engineer with the full details showing the bollards, the fencing, and the site. Also, the building department had asked to see more detail on the playground, but they would still be doing inspections as it moves further along. They would do an inspection of the facility, but they want more detail on that playground area. And then conservation agent said a request for determination, or RDA request for determination of applicability is required. So I know Jason has started that and was working on getting that submitted to conservation.
Yeah, just an update on that. I did submit that yesterday. I started making some phone calls to get a certified plot plan so you can officially see that. And I did tell Mike that we would not proceed with the company. We have a few quotes out for the actual playground equipment. We'll make sure we work alongside him and that he sees it. We work with him before we move forward.
All right, thanks. And another thing I thought of picking up on Mr. Gotti asked about accessibility. I think it would be helpful to look at that playground and just make sure that it's accessible. You know, that if a person is in a wheelchair, or just that it's not an afterthought. You know, that it's basically like you have the full accommodation there, so that if there's a person who is not able to get into the playground easily, that it's not that they have to go in through the back door or something like that. Anything you can do to improve that would be great. Let's see. So this is a public hearing. I will open it up to, unless there's any further questions here, I'll open this up to public comment. And to make a public comment, if you're a participant, you can click the raise hand if you go to the participants list, and click the raise hand button so that we can recognize you. And if you're on the, what was that?
I said there are 2 that are raised currently.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. I see. We'll go with Mr. Greg Susko. We can unmute him.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for your time. So I'm the owner of Telemon Insurance in 22-30 Southwest Park. And I just had a couple questions and concerns. And Abby, I don't know if it's possible to bring up the picture of the parking lot.
Yep.
So I'm all for a daycare. I'm the one that has the shared parking with the church on the weekends. But I have a couple concerns. So if you look down, one more down, Abby, right here. Sorry, the other one where it shows the aerial. So see those parking spots in the middle with the cars?
Yep.
So my building's to the right there, and those parking spots are deeded to me. So I'm a little concerned with kind of how we deal with drop off and pickup. So from a one-way perspective, from the church's perspective, on the weekends, they come around my building when no one's there. I have about 50 employees. But during the week, during prime hours, my staff is there from 7 to 6. I'm concerned a little bit about how they do the one-way drop-off with my spots in the middle. And then also I'm a little concerned where the playground would be, that where my parking spots here in the middle are, that it's just very close to where the fence would be. So from a liability perspective, I'm in insurance. I get a little bit nervous from that. So that's something I would consider us needing to take a look at. And then on the flip side, as you guys know, being old 1970s flex buildings with limited parking, we already run into issues pre-COVID where people that are going to visit other buildings, the building that's to the right of me, they all park in our parking spots. And as you can imagine, the parking can be quite challenging. So that's one concern I have that I'd like to understand a little bit more. And then the real big concern that I have, and again, I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. I get daycare. I'm all on board. Is that the coming into the office park off of Route 1 is not only extremely dangerous in the morning, taking a right before, because as you can imagine, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, we are the right entrance right before the on-ramp to the highway. So coming on into the office, so I come in, I do the U-turn at Lambert's. So I can imagine as people are coming in to try to drop off their children, wherever they're coming from, that's an extra 40 cars in the morning, that U-turn around Lambert's could get backed up onto Route 1. And then coming into our office park, taking that right, I often come in taking that right at a very high speed because people are on my tail. And then the final concern is leaving at the end of the day. So, you know, my team leaves anywhere from, because we're in flex hours with kids, anywhere between 4 and 6. And I do have to tell you, it's like being in a race car. Taking it right outside onto Route 1, you have to catch the brake from when the light hits the light up near Prime Auto, and you have to fly out. And the concern being having 40 vehicles with children, people being anxious to get home, people take some risks in pulling out of the office park. And as you can see from this map, it's really just a dead end. So I'm curious how we're going to handle that, especially as the winter comes and so on. So biggest concerns, as I mentioned, is we owned the parking in the middle, and then obviously pick up and drop off. On Sundays, having 200 people, super easy. Monday through Friday, even during COVID, most recently, like today, leaving the office park at 5 o'clock, was you have to floor it to get out of there as oncoming cars come. So, you know, I would challenge that we would consider doing a traffic review, as well as it can't be during COVID. If there was a light there, maybe it would help, but it's pretty dangerous. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 8 buildings. And when we get back to normal, all with 60 plus employees within those buildings.
Yeah. So those are great, Greg. I share your angst on Sunday morning and every day when I leave Southwest Park. I agree. I think every other time I enter Southwest Park, someone lays on the horn because I didn't take that turn fast enough. So I share that pain with you. Let me work through those concerns. As you know, the entrance to Encounter Church is between Suburban and the east side of or the west side of the building, I guess we would say. Or no, yeah, that's west side of the building. And so that would be the drop off. So on your side of the building, really, we would just push the cars to just circle around and leave. There would not be a drop off on that side.
Okay.
The construction, and I talked to Haynes, the construction company, about this, about where the loading dock has already been striped off, right? Mm-hmm. Where that was, of course, the loading dock at one time. Now we don't use it as a loading dock. There can be folks that can park around that side. We want the playground to be a foot or 2 feet inside of where that existing is. And so the playground would be inside the space that's already allotted, and it would not push outside of, when you look at the drawing, it would not push outside of the current spaces. Because I asked them, and we can have someone to look at that and to verify, but it's not pushing outside of the drawing of what's already drawn in the parking spaces.
Jason, just one thing to add on that. The only concern I would have is, and I totally can envision it, is that the space between the playground and where my cars, because we, like I said, we're deeded those middle spots, is probably a little bit more than a car width wide. And so we would just want to look at that, because I'd be nervous that, God forbid, someone comes around that corner to leave and they could kind of pick off some of my staff's cars on the corner. Just having that traffic, we just have to be very thoughtful of that. And then in regards to coming into the office park, where 47 brand is on that corner, it's almost in our best interest for the town to cut into that grass, kind of like we do the U-turn at Lambert's, to allow people to pull in to turn right. I mean, it is, Jason, like you said, I mean, people, if you're not taking that turn at like 25, 30, you're getting a risk getting picked off from behind. The other comment too, for everybody here is there is a daycare a little bit before the bridge, right after Lambert's. And even then, those people that are turning, they do the U-turn in the morning with me, and those people turning right are taking their lives at risk pulling in, and then even pulling out with the kids. And it's the kid piece. You know, if there was another way we could kind of weave you guys out, it would just feel much safer. It's just, I know my team, like everybody's just flying out of the office park at the end of the day.
Yeah, good points, Greg. I share that. I wish I could change it. I've thought about that as well. Cutting into the grass a little bit there at 47 to have a little bit of turn lane would sure be nice. Yeah.
So Jason, can you confirm what Greg was saying about the distance from the fence to, say, the front or back bumpers of those parked cars in the middle? Do you know what that distance is going to be? I mean, you start thinking about things like emergency vehicles going through, because right now it looks like there's no cars parked in your loading spots. So there's ample space if there's a full deck of cars parked in the middle. But once we take over that space with a fenced in area, I don't know where your people are going to go through. They may have to go on the other side of those cars that are parked towards Greg's building.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one car poorly parked to squeeze that area off to practically nothing. If it is just an 8-foot or 10-foot gap. So I think we do need to look at that from a traffic flow perspective.
To help with that, Chris, Abby, could you pull up the aerial that we were looking at where you could see the striped area and then go back to the drawing where the black marks, that's the drawing. So does that, the far right edge, does that go, Jason, all the way to the edge of the striped area? Because the striped area looked like it extended beyond what was like the length of a parking space when we were looking at the aerial. So if you go to the aerial now, the very bottom one.
And just one comment while you guys are looking at that. One way to fix this for Jason is to not have them loop around the building. They'd have to loop around the dead end and not allow them to float around the building. Because you're right, if my team parks horribly, see those cars in the middle, back up, there's nothing.
Yeah, you don't even need a team to do it poorly. Just one car is all it takes.
And yeah.
But do you see what I'm talking about in terms of that striped area is substantially wider than the width of the parking lot, the parking spaces against the building where the church is. So if the daycare fence is at the width of the car, then it looks like you have ample width as you get down into where you can see the cars. But if you're telling me that the playground area is the entire striped
Is it
area.
the grid area? Right. Is it the grid striped area, Jason?
It
distance
is
away from the building?
Yep. So I did a little bit of research, not verified by a plot plan engineer, okay, because we can get that done and we will get that done. But I believe the width right here is 11. I think that's right. And that is for one way. And I believe it's 18 for two way. So if you pull into Wegmans, right, whatever that distance is, that is a one way verified. So when they stripe that is the standard width. So the distance between the loading dock striped area and the car is standard for one way. But as I mentioned earlier, we have 1984 square feet. We only need 1,500. We can always pull it back for safety. And with Rich, building owner, with his permission, we're still within our parking. If we need to stretch it a little bit more to take up one more space, we can do that as well. Chris, he has his hand up. I'd love for Chris is the lead pastor at Encounter Church. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks so much for allowing us to be here tonight. And I appreciate Greg's comments just in advocating for safety in general. I think one of the things that we have going for us is to some of the questions around the pickup process. We have two different entrances that we will utilize during our pickup times. We have two classes, both 20 apiece, kid-wise. So we'll have a three-year-old age group, and then we have the 4 early 5 age group. The 4 early 5 age group will come in from a separate place. So we'll actually be able to minimize cars, but at the end of the day, it's 35 families that will be tuition paying families that will have to sign agreements. And so for me, there's we can't control some of the traffic implications around Highway 1. It's been interesting, even to the U-turn issue, with 47 predominantly working remotely right now. You still have to be really careful turning in. There hasn't been as much of a backup, but we're talking about 35 families who I think we're going to be able to educate, train. So whatever we decide as the parking flow plan, and our team is really, I mean, we've done large events in a lot of different areas, and so we're really, we really care about just those details of cars and kids. And so that'll be something that's really spelled out in the preschool agreement that parents are going to have to sign in order to bring their kids. And so that, to me, I want to focus on the things we can control as a preschool, as a church. And so we take that part will be the serious part of the training of being mindful of here's the safest way to flow. Here's how we're going to do drop off, pick up. Here's where you're going to go. Here's how it's going to happen. Even down to the point, if we need to do space pickup, you know, I think there's a lot of flexibility we have because we're intentionally capping and keeping the preschool smaller than it has to be per state guidelines. Because for us, this is about serving the community. We know that there's been a need. And then the profit from the preschool is going to be given to nonprofits. So part of how we're structuring the preschool, even financially, is that we're not making a profit off of it. We want it to profit our community. And so for us, kids are a big part of what we do on Sunday morning and creating that safe environment. And so, you know, we're going to listen and take your advisement and work with the parents who sign up to make sure that this is a plan that actually works and maintains safety. And, you know, to even Greg's point around which is the best one way. And I've also set up 2 cameras I've been using over the last few months. I have a camera on the front side of our building. I have a camera on the back side of the building because I've wanted to see how the cars drive around our space during the day. And that's one of the things that we'll continue to do. And because we wanted to be a little bit more educated on how do our neighbors drive around our space so that we can be cognizant of drafting a plan, not just for the parents, but also alongside of our neighbors, because there are going to be those punctuated periods in the morning, in the afternoon, evening, where people are going to be picking up their kids. And we want it to be the best for the entire office park.
Chris, quick question with the cameras. Has that been before COVID or during COVID?
Both. We had one set up pre-COVID, and then we set up an additional one post-COVID on the back side of the building.
I just think we have to really be cognizant of COVID. And I know some of our neighbors who drive some pretty fancy cars that speed down that lane because they're used to it being an industrial park. Just again, I want to reiterate from my perspective, obviously I'm an insurance liability with my cars right next to the playground, but it's more about getting in and out on Route 1. I mean, Route 1 is a tough thing. If you had a light there, different story. But with the full amount now to Chris, to your point, if your parents are trainable and we could do windows of time with 10 people coming in a certain window, not all 40 at once. I'm used to having daycare. I have kids. Come in, get them as quick as you can, get them home, get them fed, get them to bed. It just makes me nervous. And I would challenge the team to go there after COVID and take a turn at 5 o'clock. See how fast you need to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Susko and Chris for responding there. Mr. Vito had also raised his hand.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I'm the owner of Suburban HVAC. We're the other abutter to the client. And first thing I want to say is that the church has been an excellent partner, and they've obeyed every rule that they've set forth, and we really appreciate them having them as a tenant next door to us. I want to make a few comments. A lot of my comments will be similar to what Greg said, but I have a couple others because I'm on the other side of the building. One of the challenges, first of all, I want to echo the Route 1 issue. And I think that I encourage everybody here to try to take a right into the building. There's a permanent pothole at the exact point where you take the right that the town has never fixed properly on top of everything because of the speed that you have to take that turn. And the other thing to notice is that Route 95 entrance is right there. So people are slowing down to try to get to the entrance, and people are cutting them off because they didn't realize that they had to take a right. Okay. And Greg is absolutely true that you have to wait there until the prime light goes by. The other comment I want to make is that the people dropping off kids are not necessarily the parents. Okay. My son's 38. I have 2 grandchildren, and I know that we routinely substitute to pick people up. So if you have a random person that has to pick up the kids from daycare, and no one would be familiar with that issue if they don't routinely turn into that driveway. The second issue is the original application for the church was approved stating the fact that they were really holding mass on Sundays. And there was never an intent. There's a significant issue with parking, as everyone keeps bringing up. You know, there was an understanding that the church was going to be active when the park was not. And my opinion is that that was the intention of the original application. Our offices are our hours are 7:30 to 4. We're an HVAC company. I have 50 employees. There's literally about 10 to 15 people in the office, but between 7:30 and 8:30, I have vans coming in and out of the building to get ready to go to jobs. So, and if you look at it, there's an imaginary line down between our office and between Telemon. So the description of where these people are dropping off is when we have our busiest time. So there'll be trucks going the opposite direction out. The next issue is that we get deliveries all day long. We receive HVAC equipment. Those are tractor trailer trucks. Those tractor trailer trucks, if you look, there's a loading dock in the back of our building. Those trucks come any time of the day. And many times they have to back up. And so that sounds logistically concerning to me, is how are those trucks going to randomly come in, and with children and potentially parents coming back and forth, it sounds a bit crazy to me. So the park has one entry exit. It has one entry exit on Route 1. That's always been an issue. And I think just the extra activity is a bit concerning. I'm trying to see what else. So logistically, I see that our business model conflicts directly with the major timing of the daycare. And again, great neighbors. I love it. I like the idea of people going in the front and not driving around the building. But I also think that you'll have random people that have never ever picked anyone up coming there on a frequent basis that probably don't understand the logistics of it.
Thank you, Mr. Vito. Anyone have any follow-up there?
Yeah, I appreciate. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, Chris.
No, I appreciate both Greg and Rich being here. This is the value of a public forum, so that we can address our concerns and issues. The beauty of the space, as I said earlier, to Rich's point, There will be grandparents, but again, we're talking about 35 families. And to me, that's a communication issue with the 35 families that can address that problem. Every single day around America, people get their kids out of the car in all kinds of contexts. Pre-COVID, parking lots and cars are driving by. And so, I mean, I think on one hand, being able just to make parents aware, hey, this is a busy office park. We want to be mindful, be good neighbors. Parking allows us to do drop off, pick up. We're talking about 20 people per entry. Over the course of an hour, you're averaging 3 people. I mean, so there's, it's the 20 people, that's every 3 minutes, you're going to have a drop off. And so there's and a pickup based on the 2 doors. So there's not going to be a huge surge. I understand the concern. We've had events before at the church. We have on a really busy Sunday, on a Christmas Eve or an Easter, we have more cars moving around on a Sunday morning with people that have more kids than what even we would have at a preschool. So what I'm saying is on a Sunday morning, on an Easter Sunday, we actually have more cars than are currently in the office park in the 2 abutting neighbor spots. So we actually have stress tested the concerns they're concerned about. That's why I don't want to come across nonchalant.
Am I still unmuted for a sec? Yeah. So I totally agree. Off hours, you guys are great. It worked out great because you're busy when we're not busy. But at for instance, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., that is when our company is the busiest it is. And people aren't, and again, it was an industrial park before you guys came. So the intent was to have you be active when we weren't, sort of, at least that was the original intent. And again, I love the idea and I'm totally for it. I just don't, like Greg says, the liability of having a tractor trailer truck hit anybody or damage a vehicle. Or if you look at even where I park next to my building. If I back up, I have to watch out. There's just enough room for me to back up without hitting the car behind me. So, and again, it's more of an issue with the timing of a active business park and the liability of, somewhat random people coming in and out like that. With all due respect. I mean, I'm very concerned about it.
Thank you, Mr. Vito. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, Chris, I respect the agreement with the parents, but I think we need more detailed information. I think what I'm hearing is that they'd like to be a reevaluation of the parking agreement. Perhaps I heard that incorrectly. I think that there needs to be more detailed information on the pickup and drop off. And, I live not too far from there. So coming off of getting on 295 from that area, they can be backed up onto Route 1. And that is a concern. So, maybe a traffic study might be necessary. And I think we just need more detailed information. And Abby, there was no one from the fire chief that didn't respond because I'm concerned about the turning radius there in the back that have been brought up.
Right, we didn't get comments from the fire department. We did have comments from the police department though. We did hear from our engineer about requesting a more detailed site plan showing a close-up of that area and of that specific property, because the one that was submitted is of the whole office park.
It's okay to hold signs up for the, one way, but, we need the data and the direction to support all of that, in my opinion, So
I think I'm still on. I'll just make a comment just to be clear with everyone that's in the call. We do not have a parking agreement with Suburban, with Mr. Vito. And so we do not utilize those spaces. If you're looking at the aerial view, that's to the left. We don't utilize those spaces and we never have. We do have an agreement with Telemon, but for this, we don't need any additional parking. We're gonna have a staff of 7 and access to 50 spaces. So it's just traffic is what I hear. I'm just repeating, right? So I know you mentioned traffic. I mean, parking, there's no parking issue. We don't need any additional spaces at all. Our complete staff can park on the back side of the building, right? Or on the front side where our main entrance is. And so I share those concerns. I hate that pothole, Rich. I really do, man. I dodge it every time, and I come screaming, coming in and out of the park. I particularly at 5 o'clock, even though there's the problem isn't necessarily the volume of cars leaving. The problem is just Route 1. And we're not going to change that. There will never be a light there, right? I'm not a traffic engineer. There's not going to be a light thrown out for Southwest Park. I think that is the challenge, the personal challenge. And hey, we're a church, and I mean this when I say I pray when I leave Southwest Park. I'm like, are you kidding me? I got to floor it, and it is tough. But the 35 cars, I think it could be in our diligence for sure to do everything we can to make sure the traffic flow is safe, including looking at the size and the placement of the playground. We will certainly.
I think so. I think that if I could sense the board members' feeling here, and then just correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like we need more detail. Like you kind of, I think mapping out exactly what the parking flow plan will be. Maybe there's additional lines to be drawn. Maybe you always feel like, you can tell people what you want them to do, but you need, just looking at those pictures, we don't have a sense of like, it looks like a tight turn. So I think that more detail to address many of these issues that have come up would be our responsibility, to approve, as we review this as a design review. It's not a permit, it's, but it is that there've been a number of issues raised. I think that many of them would be addressed by spelling it out specifically. This is the flow of traffic. I don't know if there's anything we can do with our DPW or recommendations, suggestions. We don't control Route 1 either, right? I mean, that's a state, under the state's purview, and then the actual park itself, I assume, is private responsibility. But I think it's kind of.
Yeah, excuse me, but the park is a public roadway. 16 Southwest Park is.
Okay.
And that if you want to, let me just give you a visual. First of all, I'll work with the church because we like them as neighbors to see, hopefully they can be successful at this. But, I was driving into the park. Me and my wife live in Dedham, about 5 minutes away. We go into the Lamberts turnaround every day. I drive in the opposite lane when I pull in because I don't want to hit the pothole. And I almost hit the car that was coming towards me the other day. And my wife said, will you please learn to drive after doing it for 50 years? And I said, listen, tomorrow, I'm going to drive the right way. So I hit the pothole and almost put her through the ceiling because I didn't want to swerve over. So there's definitely a DPW issue here that can be resolved. I don't know how to do it. Being a subcontractor in Westwood, I know the town is extremely diligent on making things right. So if you guys could help us get the pothole fixed, that would be very, very appreciated.
Mr. Vito, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, where's the pothole? Is it on Route 1 or is it on the Southwest Park Road?
It's in Southwest Park.
I will speak to Todd Corchin tomorrow.
It's been fixed several times, and a week later, it's back again. Appreciate it, because you literally take that corner so quickly.
Abby, did you?
Yes, Dave, I just want to add and remind the board that this is a limited EIDR because the childcare use, also previously the church use, religious, and the childcare and school use is a protected use under the what's referred to as the Dover Amendment under Mass General Laws. So this is a limited site plan review. So you have limited review authority. In these instances, these uses, such as the childcare use, is allowed in any zoning district. Same with the church. So the planning board cannot deny the use, and you also you can look at this you know, from the parking as it meets the, you know, general requirements for the proposed use, and looking at the dimensional regulations and the parking and traffic flow, but you can't require a full traffic study or a full exterior lighting plan. It's not at the same, doesn't have the same requirements as your other EIDR, a full EIDR. That's why we call it a limited EIDR.
Right, so that's, I think, yeah, we can't say no childcare center, but the point of the review is to identify these issues and try to get them resolved. So definitely, Pat, if he can talk to DPW.
I will be on the phone with the DPW director first thing tomorrow morning, trying to identify the pothole. Sometimes this time of year, all they can do is put a patch in it, my understanding. And then in the spring, they can, when it thaws, you can put a more permanent patch.
Sure. Well, we've been there 5 years and the potholes never left. So they've fixed it several times. So just for your feedback.
Thank you for doing that. That's good. And thank you. I think my last comment would, for me on behalf of Encounter Churches, there's not a concern that's been raised that we don't recognize and share. I think they're all good points. Take them certainly into consideration, because everything that you've brought up certainly has to do with safety, and we share as well.
Thank you.
Dave, procedurally, are we looking at a continuance? I mean, you and Deb have both stated looking for more information. I don't know, Abby, are we continuing this to a future meeting? What's the next step? Because some very valid concerns have been raised, and it sounds like Jason and Chris are receptive to those and they share them. So,
right. Yep. So your options are to, I mean, unless you have enough information tonight, your other option is to request any, you know, just make clear to Jason what you'd like to see for, you know, the continued hearing date. The next scheduled planning board meeting is Tuesday, February 2nd. And then, you know, I don't know how much time you would need if that's 3 weeks from tonight is the next meeting date.
Yeah, that's fine to me. I would need some guidance maybe after this meeting. I can't, you know, we want to work as Rich said. Is he still on here? Yeah. As Rich said, we want to work with Rich. We can't decrease the amount of, you know, obviously vehicle that he's using. So we want to work with him. I think that's enough time to work over the concerns and bring that back.
I think to Jason's point, Abby's point as well, just being clear what those actual concerns are that are within our agency to control, as it's been stated. I appreciate Pat and dealing with the pothole. There's elements of Highway 1 that we don't have the power or authority to address. So yeah, as clear as it can be for us, we would appreciate it, and we'll be diligent. Safety is a really big thing. If any of you ever want to walk through our space or tour around the area, we'd love to do that. We take the safety of kids really seriously, because there's been a lot of damage done to families by churches who didn't do that. And that's something that is a fire inside of us when it comes to making sure that we honor families and the trust that they give us. So.
Right, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion, or?
I think before we make a motion, we should, you know, be clear on what it is we're asking them to come back with on the 2nd. So if we can recap that, it sounds like a detailed site plan for the playground in terms of the bollards, spacing, you know, the dimensions of the actual physical space is one thing that I heard from Mike and a couple others. Maybe a more detailed traffic flow after you work it out with, you know, I don't know if you're going to work that out with Rich and Greg. It's something that you can all agree on. Anything else?
Possible lighting for the area, if that's where they're headed.
Yeah, I think that's the exact location of the playground, the location of the bollards, the size of the bollards, the lighting, the flow. So where are the cars going to drive, like arrows on the road? any details, like if there'd be changes to like painting lines on the road, the status of that pothole. I mean, that's not your control, but it just makes sense to include that as we'll find out what that is at the next meeting. Let's see.
One other thing, Dave, is, sorry.
And just highlighting any of the accessibility locations, again, just like on the maps we already had, just what's the handicapped access, what's the accessibility? Rob,
It's in the traffic flow. We actually, I just recalled in 2017 was submitted. I didn't prepare it for this meeting, Abby. I didn't know that that would come up because we're already in the midst of managing more than 35, cars. We manage a lot more than that on Sunday. I didn't think that would be an issue. So that's already prepared. And I can get that so that you guys can see it with arrows and all that. We do have that. But I'll make sure to bring that to both Rich and Greg as well so we can talk through it.
I think the big thing is that it's very different. Like the Sunday traffic flow is one thing, but the dropping off, stopping the car, dropping the kids off and turning around all at one time in the morning and evening, it's just a different dynamic probably. So I think specifically addressing how that's going to work would be helpful. Mr. Gotti.
And Jason, you mentioned a couple of times, the details are sort of still to be determined as to pick up, drop off based on market demand. Would you be able to survey your market to say what, and get a sense of what that might look like to maybe address some of Rich's concerns in terms of coming and goings of vans and trucks to understand what that overlap looks like?
Yeah, we certainly can. I think that's a great point, but leaving room for I'm going to be the teacher, not the principal. Once the director comes in, we would certainly come back. But I think it would, even when that first question was asked, I'm like, I should have went ahead and built a sample schedule just for you to look at. We will do that in the next 3 weeks. We'll propose a specific schedule, try to work around it. And if it does shift, we'll do our due diligence to talk to Rich and Greg as well, because all those points are certainly valid. So yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. And I want to pull the board members with the waivers so that we know we give them everything they need to respond to. Does anyone have any concern, assuming that they provide all the other the elements we've talked about? The waivers that were requested was an exterior lighting plan, a traffic impact study, presentation model, and stormwater drainage report. Does anyone have any concern with granting those waivers?
Until we get a better idea about lighting at the next meeting, I think we should leave that off the table for now.
All right.
Yeah, I echo that. I think normally I don't have a problem with the waiver of an exterior lighting plan, but in this case, we're creating a use outside the building, and being in New England and the sun setting, as I mentioned earlier, so it comes up. It's an issue. So I'd like to see what the proposal is there. Jason mentioned he wasn't sure. Well, maybe in the next 3 weeks we can become more sure as to what's happening with regard to the lighting. The other things, I'm not so concerned about the 35 cars. My gut tells me the whole road can handle that. The addition, there is a concern on my part about them having completed a plan for how these cars are going to navigate through their property. And my biggest concern is the resulting lane that is created between the bollards basically and the bumpers of the other car. I think, if you're building at 1900 and you only need 15, that might be a place you can make things a little easier for your parents and for us, frankly, to say, yeah, that's a good plan.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Shaving off several feet there and even pushing it on the lateral side would not be hard at all.
One thought, at that first corner that you come to, you may notch it at a 45 because a bollard right there in the corner creates a 90-degree turn, and cars don't turn 90 degrees that fast.
Yep. Good idea.
All right, thanks. Thanks everyone. Someone like to make a motion to continue this?
I'll make a motion. We continue this hearing, this limited EIDR to the planning board meeting on Tuesday, November 2nd via Zoom,
February
7 p.m.
February 2nd.
Sorry. Sorry, I've done it. February 2nd, 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And that'll be a continuation of the public hearing as well. So seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Path?
Yes.
Ms. Conant?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So this hearing will be continued to February 2nd, 7 p.m. Zoom. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right. Okay, the next, so that's the, we've continued that public hearing. The next item on the agenda is a discussion and review of zoning amendments to be submitted to town meeting. There are 4 amendments or 4 zoning articles to be discussed here. I noticed that our building commissioner, Joe Doyle, I believe is here, and maybe not. Did he leave?
Yep. Nope, I just brought him in.
Okay, great. So one of the items is was recommended from the building department, and I thought it would be wise to let's talk about that one first, unless anybody objects. That's the one related to that's for temporary uses. And thought so. We have that's temporary uses. There's one related to firearms zoning, which we've talked about a lot. We'll talk about that one next, and then the medical use zoning amendment article to take that up after those first 2, if that sounds reasonable to everybody. And the 4th one is housekeeping, so that we can cover that last of all. All right, Mr. Doyle, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about this?
Okay, how you doing, everybody?
Hi, Joe.
The impetus behind this request is that over the past couple of years, we've had small businesses basically looking to do weekend yard sale, outside sales in zones that where it's not allowed. And if they had to go through the ZBA, you're looking at a 3 to 6 month window, considerable expense, probably not worth it for them to do it. We had one event at Good Plaza, I think that was 2 years ago, where I'm not sure who organized it, but they convinced people to bring things that they had for sale out onto the sidewalk in front. Unfortunately, that was done without permission from anybody, which meant that we had no review for parking or blocking of the sidewalk, etc. And I'm sure that their reasoning was that, if it's going to take me 6 months to do it, I think I'll just go do it. They also, you were mentioned that 47 over there on Southwest Park, they had thrown a tent up. They were trying to sell some excess inventory on a weekend. I spotted them, told them they couldn't do it. And then the next year they come in and found out they needed a special permit, which, like I say, runs a lot of money, and it could take them up to 6 months to have it done. So the building code, section 108, allows the building official to grant a permit for a temporary structure or use up to 180 days in conjunction with permission from or review with the fire department. I think that this just helps bring the zoning bylaws more in line with the building code. And obviously it's going to be run by, just about every department that has anything to do with land use, along with police, fire, and the Board of Selectmen.
Joe, did you say the authority extends up to 180 days for a temporary use?
That's under the building code, yes. And then here, what you're proposing is 6 months. Basically the same.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Right, so the board had in your packet some draft language that Joe and I worked on, which would add an amendment for proposals that are less than 6 months, can be reviewed reviewed by staff and then issued a permit from the building commissioner. So we added language in here that upon written request for a proposed use or structure for less than 6 months, has to be submitted to the building commissioner with details on the description, proposed time frame, hours, and proposed plans. And then it says, after receipt of application, the application shall be distributed to and reviewed by the town administrator, town planner, and select board for review and comment prior to granting approval. And so I talked with Joe, and if this were to be approved, it would go through a formal permit process with the building department. And at that time, with our electronic permitting, it also goes out to other staff for review and comments at that time. So we didn't list all the staff in the zoning bylaw, but if this were to be approved, other departments would have the opportunity to review and comment on it.
So Abby or Joe, given all this interaction with all departments, what's the anticipated time for the issuance of a permit for temporary use? How long will this process take? If the ZBA takes 3 to 6 months, how long will this take?
I think it depends upon how complicated the application is, what they're actually asking to do. But if it's something as simple as a weekend outdoor sales event at a local business, it wouldn't take more than a week to 2 weeks. Most of the moment.
So Joe, along those lines, right, what's the, of the types of uses that you're anticipating, are the vast majority those, short duration, multi-day or single day sales and that type of thing? Because I kind of share Chris's concern. I like the idea of shortening a process, but I don't love the idea of having that shorter process be applicable to the 6-month window. So is there a way, if we know that the majority of those things are for short duration sale events or whatever it might be, that may make it easier to say short process for short window?
I can't imagine that there are going to be very many people who would be asking for a 6-month permit, except for maybe people who would like to have a temporary use that they are eventually going to go to the Board of Appeals. And while that process is going on, they'd be able to show that they have a successful business or a successful use. As far as, shortening the window, the building code says I can do it for 6 months. So I don't know why. I don't think that a bylaw that's in conflict with the building department would fly past the AG. I think Pat could probably discuss that a little bit more than I. But you have to have a specific, if I'm not mistaken, you have to have a specific request to the AG for a bylaw to supersede the building code.
Pat, you're on.
You're muted.
It's a natural habit. I believe you're correct. So I don't think you want to get into something that supersedes the building code. That's what the way I look at this is kind of out of the COVID stuff in the outdoor dining. That once the ABCC kind of relaxed their regulations, we were able to streamline the restaurants being able to get seats outside last summer. That's good for warm weather for them. Unfortunately, right now, it's hard to eat outside on a night like tonight,
What happens after
Yeah,
6 months?
in that vein, sorry.
Or after 6 months, like suppose it was for outdoor dining, would they be able to just reapply every 6 months, or does it? What's the intention there? Like, you wouldn't want it to become a permanent thing where it's just always renewing or something, or maybe you would. I don't know. Maybe that would be.
I think that my intention is that would give, if somebody thought they wanted to be able to do something basically permanently or really long term, that this would give them a window to see if that what they want to do is going to be successful. The town would be able to evaluate whether it's something they want to be bothered with while they're waiting for the special permit process to proceed. Special permit, they can get up to 3 years, 1 year at a time.
And what, so use or structure, so what's is an example of a structure that would be permitted this way?
Tent.
So again, the outdoor dining example is a good example. Other questions, comments?
I would think it would just be something we needed to cap at 1 year, maybe one continuance to another 6 months, but anything over that wouldn't fly.
Yeah, I don't know if is there any way that, so it says after application, it'll be distributed, reviewed by the town planner, select board, and town administrator. So so then you have a 6-month permit, but it could be denied by any of those groups. Is that the idea? Like, if the select board didn't want to grant it, then it would be denied, and I guess it would, next year they could reapply, and it's not limited.
Or they could apply to the ZBA, which would take them much longer, depending upon how determined they are to have the temporary structure or use. Certainly if the planning board has said no, the ZBA probably would take that into account as well when they came before them.
Mike, were you looking to limit it so that it wouldn't become a recurring application, or kind of what was your?
Yes, I just think, for a temporary structure up to 6 months, maybe you can renew it once, but I wouldn't want to see that being done over and over, up to 3 years, as it were. If we had, if the ZBA had done it and given them up to 3 years, 1 year at a time, I just think it shouldn't exceed a year. We should cap it at 1 year.
I have no problem with that.
So Joe, in this scenario, if we did this, the planning board issues a temporary for 6 months, or not the planning board, but through this process. And then it does another 6 months. And in that second 6 months, they apply to the ZBA, and then they can get an additional up to 3 years, 1 year at a time. So a total of 4 years as a temporary use or structure.
The way this is set up, yeah. That would be my thought, yeah.
Joe, how long did you say it's saving the applicant? How much time?
I'm sorry?
How much time is it saving the applicant if this bylaw goes into effect versus the typical process?
I wouldn't think anything would take a month. I would be looking more that this would be something that's real quick. Somebody wants to do a yard, a weekend sale at their business within the next couple of weeks. I would think that the process shouldn't take more than a week to 2 weeks.
And the zoning board process is about 3 to 4 months currently, because they meet once a month. And then to submit the application, do the notification, they also have a strict 20-day appeal period from after the decision. So it is about, and then they also have to prepare the plan. So it is about a 3 to 4 month. So this would save them at least 3 months for an applicant. For an event that qualifies, it would save at least 3 months.
Abby, do we have enough material so all of these things today, we're trying to get it to a point where it can be published, and as long as we agree on the overall scope of this, then it can move forward, right? So
we could add language that says one extension may be allowed, but never more to be permitted over a 1 year. I have to add that language in.
all right, any questions or other suggestions? I think that sounds like a good idea. Like I wouldn't want it to be a sort of I mean, I see what, what Mr. Doyle is describing for the weekend sale. That's totally sounds great. And then, outdoor dining during COVID again, but I wouldn't want it to be sort of something that could be renewed for year after year after year. It should go through the regular process if it's not really temporary anymore after that. So I think that's a good change.
We have a list of temporary structures that would be allowable under this bylaw, or is it just decided upon by the building commissioner?
Not sure.
What do we define a temporary
out there of what's acceptable? I know you can use a trailer, a tent. It would all depend on the different situations, and I think it would be up to Joe to approve it or not to approve it.
But right now, some of the towns, some other towns are dealing with these temporary structures that are bringing people in for COVID tests. And they're actually like a little trailer or a storage trailer sitting on the ground. And if you have to go through a 3 to 6 month window to bring one of those in, then now you've got something that really would have benefited the town, benefit CVS too, but benefit the town by having something local. So, I mean, there's several scenarios that I think this plays into. I don't foresee too many of these being something that would be more than, a weekend or 2 weekends in a row. I don't think it's something that I mean, I could be totally wrong. Maybe once it's written, people go, oh, this would be great. But I haven't had an awful lot of requests. It's just that the few we've had to deny, except for Sassy's on 109. I discussed that at the time with Nora. It was for 1 day outside, and I wrote it under the building code permissions to let her have her outdoor sales.
If you adopt this bylaw change, you're going to be giving Joe or whoever his successor is a good deal of discretion to make decisions under it.
That actually brings up something I was going to ask Joe. If I don't want it to become formulaic, but is there a way you could identify what your review process is? Because we know what the ZBA does when they take up to 5 or 6 months or whatever to review this. I have total confidence that, in what you do, but I want to make sure that this is not the real easy way to get this done for a year. That there should be some scrutiny here over what's being done. And I have no problem with the job you do in issuing all of these things. We're looking at a new process here, and I just want to make sure the process is transparent and everyone understands going in what's expected of them as an applicant for this.
The process would be similar to what we get right now for building permit. The application is distributed electronically to every land use department as well as the police department. And certainly anybody who's in my seat who likes to keep their job and not have to retire early will take into consideration everything that every other department has to mention. Say Concom says, oh, sorry, that tent's going to be in the wetlands. Well, then certainly I'm not going to say, well, that's too bad. I have a right to make a temporary use. And, like I said, a lot of these departments are just going to look at it and go, DPW is going to go, oh, they're not in the highway. What do I care? And they're going to check it off. Or they don't need sewer and they're going to check it off. But in general, you'll have departments making comments and they would be taken into consideration.
Okay.
And Joe, the police would have to look at it from a public safety and the fire from a public safety perspective, correct?
Correct. Under the building code, the fire department can put the kibosh on it. So
Right.
It would be the same under this bylaw.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other questions, then I think we can. We should probably vote to submit this, Abby, or what's our process here?
Actually, you voted at your last meeting, so this is on the warrant. The warrant closed by the select board last night. So they have the 4 zoning articles from you. So the next step after tonight is that I will prepare the legal notice for the newspaper for the public hearing. So the public hearing will be at your February 23rd meeting. So I think I have what I need after hearing from you tonight to update that a little bit more, that draft article. And then in the next 2 weeks, that will go to the newspaper and we'll get that posted. And all the articles will get posted on the website, posted with you, the planning board, and the town clerk.
Yeah, and I want to look through what her final draft is of the article to make sure we're not running afoul of anything.
All right. If there's nothing else, then thanks, Mr. Doyle, for.
Thank you for your time and your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate
Stay
it.
safe, everybody.
You as well.
You too.
Thank you. All right. The next article is the firearms zoning article. Abby, quickly re-summarize.
If you recall, this is the article from last town meeting that you all supported. I know Mike wasn't here from this, but the planning board and I think the FinCom did vote to move this forward at town meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, actually Rob wasn't here either. But it was to remove the special permit allowance for firearms sales in the local business A and B districts.
That's right.
That's so that it's prohibited in our High Street and Washington Street business districts, but it's still allowed by special permit in your highway business and in the industrial zone. So that was bumped from the last town meeting due to the reduced town meeting warrant because of COVID. So unless you have any other further changes, I think there was agreement on this one because the use of a firearm sale was not the most desirable use for your village centers, downtown areas. You wanted more active uses.
All right. Is there no changes from anyone? All right. Then let's move on to discuss the medical use zoning amendment article.
Thank
Do we
you.
have a working group people here or what?
I see one member, Mike Detremont. He was on a working group. If you recall, in the fall, I had reached out to various residents to see if they were interested. Chris Paff and Rob Gotti on the planning board were also on this working group, and there was about I think 8 residents total. We tried to get people representing different areas of town. So a resident that lived near East Street, a resident that lived at University Station, a resident that lived on Grove Street, a resident that had a real estate background, a healthcare background, and public safety, which is Mike Detremont is representing, the public safety police aspect as a due to his background and as a resident. So we met 3 times in November and December and came up with a proposed draft warrant article that you had in your packet. Now, I think Rob and Chris are here as well. And I think, Rob, if you'd like to explain it a little bit more, we could turn it over to you, or I could
Sure.
say, we've talked about this article a few times in the past. This article addresses some of those earlier issues, but it's proposed in a different way. It proposes a different way to kind of close those loopholes that we had talked about in the past. So this is a new zoning article, but it does a lot of the same things that we were looking to do previously.
Okay, I want to share my screen real quick and go back here. So I'm just going to take you through basically the way we approached it with everybody who was on this advisory panel, because every one of them was coming into it cold and didn't really have a background in it. So it was easiest for us to sort of take them through from the beginning. So we kind of went through, all right, what is zoning in Westwood? And, key concept number one was we wanted to make sure that everybody agreed with, we want to maintain control of our community. Then we talked about things that were defined as uses, but undefined as zones. And then there's sort of a pre and a post university station era as it relates to medical use. And we got into what those were. Then we just said, you know what, let's level set for them. Let's show them the zoning maps, show them what the defined uses are and how they overlay. And then let's talk about the gaps and the uses that we're seeking to designate within overlay zones. We got into a little bit around Mass General Law 40A in terms of, the Dover Amendment that Abby had referenced in a prior part of the hearing. We talked about protected classes and how that applies here, and then what the implications were. And then we had a bunch of conversation with this working group that Abby talked about, and that led to ultimately a recommendation, which is what you see in the zoning bylaw. So just to sort of take you through zoning in Westwood, it's kind of like the three-branch system of checks and balances of the federal government, right? The planning board creates and carries out policy, so we're sort of like the legislative branch. The zoning board of appeals is the judicial branch. They adjudicate the appeals to those zoning laws where it's not clearly defined and thus open to challenge. And then Abby, the town planner, and Joe are the enforcement, right? They enforce those existing regulations and any special permits or variances. So that just sort of level set for everybody. And let's talk about it. We want to maintain, control. So zoning allows us to be proactive in planning to be able to protect and preserve while still improving the town by defining how property may be used and where those defined uses may locate within town. Then when you talk about sort of the notion of fail to plan, plan to fail, the absence of a zone being specified as to where a defined use may locate doesn't mean it can't locate here in town. In fact, it just means it can locate anywhere. And so we sort of just got level set again. Do we want to maintain control? Okay, there was consensus that yes, we do. So when you think about medical use zoning in town, it's sort of pre and post University Station. It was one way all the way up to 2013. And then with the advent of University Station, there were some things that were added. Pre-University Station, there was a single medical use term, right? The office of a doctor or dentist, not a resident on premise. Post-University Station, there were three use terms. There's office of a doctor or dentist, there's office of a healthcare professional, and then there's medical center or clinic. Now, the working group that Abby talked about, we had folks from all of the areas that she mentioned, Islington, East Street, Downey, University Station, the Martha Jones Sheehan area, and High Street. And then we had a variety of experience from public safety. Mike Dentremont is on here. We had nursing professionals, we had mental health professionals, we had commercial real estate folks, we had people representing the business community, and people with zoning experience. So it was a really robust discussion and a lot of really good questions from folks. So what did we talk about with them? Well, we assessed the need. We talked about the current definitions. We talked about Mass General Law 40. We confirmed that we wanted to maintain control. And then we said, okay, given that desire, are there areas where these uses should or should not be allowed? As we started to look at those and sort of, overlay them on the map. So I said, okay, what are the remaining options once all of those places where we thought we wouldn't want some of these things to locate, what's left? Are there other considerations that we need to be thinking of? And then which options then make the most sense? And that led to the recommendation that you'll see at the end. So very simple shape, there's Westwood. When you look at and overlay the residential districts, this is how that map looks. So the white areas are the purely commercial areas, commercial or industrial. So here's your non-residential districts. You can see that there's really not a ton of non-residential area in Westwood. And so instantly makes it more challenging in terms of where you're going to locate some of these things. And this is the full zoning map where you start to have the residential, the non-residential, and the mixed use overlay. This gets very, very detailed, and I can bring it up and zoom in and out if you need, but this is what you would find the base map with all districts on the town website. So what makes us different from different towns, right? So we have premier highway and train access that adds to appeal. The Brigham Women's Medical Center certainly raised the community profile and demonstrates that it is a suitable location for them. When we built University Station, we had zoning amendments that were done that introduced those two new uses, the office of a healthcare professional and the medical use or clinic. And these things exclude currently hospital and substance rehabilitation treatment facilities from University Station, but they don't regulate these uses town-wide. And so that was really the thing that opened the proverbial Pandora's box. So that's why we need to zone this in order to maintain the aforementioned control. So we then looked at Mass General Law, and there's a section 3 that talks about not discriminating against a disabled person. And there was a letter from special counsel to the planning board back in, I believe it was March of 19, maybe it was 18, that basically said that the substance abuse treatment patients would be considered a disabled or protected class. And so we would not be able to just say this was an excluded use in town. So then we said, okay, what are the current undefined uses with designated zone? The office of a doctor or dentist not a resident on premise is not defined in the definition section of the zoning bylaw, but the table of use chart does have this in there as to where it is and is not allowed. So that's something that needs to be cleaned up. We have defined uses that don't have clearly designated zones in terms of the office of a healthcare professional and the medical center or clinic. And then we have currently undefined uses, and therefore they have no designated zones, and that would be hospitals and substance rehabilitation and treatment facilities. So what we're talking about here, and as we got into the weeds with the folks on the committee, on the advisory panel, we're proposing expanding the current definition or condensing the current definition of office or doctor or dentist not a residence and office of a healthcare professional to just be office of a healthcare professional. Whereas we're delineating more definitions of medical center or clinic so that we can designate specific zones for each. So we're expanding medical center or clinic to medical center or clinic, hospital as a separate definition, and as a third definition, substance rehabilitation and treatment facility. And by defining those terms, we can then appropriately zone them. So then we talked about, everybody was on board with wanting to maintain control, and are there areas where these should or shouldn't be allowed? And we talked about the options and what considerations we should be taking in, beyond just the zoning aspect of it, and therefore what makes most sense. So there was universal agreement that we wouldn't want to locate these things in residential districts. So that then brought it down to the non-residential districts. This is the same map I showed you earlier of the non-residential districts. Some of the additional considerations that were part of the discussion were things like maintaining commercial tax split rate with the commercial and residential, impacts as related to nonprofit and some of what that might do on the commercial residential taxes, and then the whole notion of pilot agreements and how those can make things a little more complex as well. And then we got into sort of districts that remained following all of those discussions. I'm not going to get into the details of all of those discussions. If you guys have questions, you can certainly ask them. Where we netted out with was sort of the two most applicable zones, since we have medical use, the clinic here in University Ave. We said that would be the place where if we broke these definitions, said, well, zone hospital in the University Ave section, and then use substance abuse and treatment facility and zone it over here in the Louderbrook area that is currently Fox Hill and the Meditech right off of 128. So after much discussion and input from the various members of that advisory panel, we came down to those two specific zones and those split uses, and that led to the clarifying definition of uses that you're going to see in the bylaw recommendation and the recommendation of the bylaw itself, which I'll let Abby speak to in greater detail. But does anybody, before we move into the specifics of the bylaw itself, does anybody have any questions about the process and the participation of the group?
No, I think you did a great job explaining that.
Thanks, Mike. You're the litmus test, right? Because you're the guy who's sort of not been part of that discussion recently. So if that was good for you, then that's great.
Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. It really does add the context and the why.
Great. So then we'll get into the details of the actual bylaw recommendation itself. Oops, hang on a second. There we go. So sort of at a summary level, Ab, I'll let you go, you take it from here.
Sure. So the proposed draft bylaw proposes creating a new medical facilities overlay district. So it would be over a portion of the ARO zone off of High Street. So only over 2 properties, not the whole ARO zone. So it would be a new overlay district that we would create. So, you know, after this meeting, we would we have to show an updated map showing this area, but it would be over the Louderbrook Drive, 100 Louderbrook Drive and 10 Longwood Drive. That's where Fox Hill Village currently is today and where the Meditech property is today. So that's where the proposed draft zoning would only allow hospitals and substance treatment facilities in that zone in that new overlay district on those 2 parcels by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then we would, the bylaw proposes allowing medical centers or clinics only at University Station. So that would be, or in the University Ave mixed use overlay district, which is University Station. And the reason for that is because of the master development plan there, we already have an agreement with the master developer for any nonprofit uses for the pilot payment in lieu of taxes agreement. And that would still require a special permit and a project development review with the planning board if another medical center or clinic was proposed in that area. Is there another slide? Okay. So this, yeah, so as shown on the screen in the draft zoning bylaw that you had in your packet, it shows amending the existing definitions for medical centers and office of a healthcare professional, and then adding new definitions, hospital and substance rehabilitation or treatment facility. So proposes adding those new definitions. And then the largest part is creating this new overlay district. So that's where it spells out the process, the parcels that would apply, the medical facilities, the exact parcels, and the process for review and approval, what they applying for a special permit and holding a public hearing with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And it talks, we also added a section about the procedures and the decision process that the zoning board would use to review, that the zoning board can impose reasonable conditions, such as safeguards for surrounding properties. That could include security requirements, noise controls. They could discuss a pilot agreement, a payment in lieu of taxes, but there's no obligation for them to agree to do that. So that would have to be voluntary, but it's something that could be discussed, as well as the limits in the hours. And so the Office of a Healthcare Professional, that's really changing the term Office of a Doctor or Dentist. Doesn't make any changes to where it's currently allowed today, which it's currently allowed in all the commercial districts and allowed by special permit in the general residence district. And yep, so this shows the changes to the chart, which essentially it would say medical centers or clinics, hospitals, substance rehabilitation or treatment facility is not allowed, except for the footnotes would allow it under only these certain conditions. So medical center or clinic, if someone inquired, the base zoning of University Ave is the industrial zone. But then if you read that footnote 8, it says only as allowed and permitted under the University Ave mixed use overlay. And then the hospitals and the treatment center, the footnote 9, that refers to only by special permit as allowed in this new medical facilities overlay district.
And these are the footnotes that you were just referring to. So that was really it. So we wanted to be able to, describe in detail sort of the input that we received from the advisory panel and how that led to the changes in the proposed zoning warrant article that Abby put in the packet.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Rob and Chris. This is excellent. Do we have any questions or comments from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, there's a question in the queue when you get to it.
All right. No questions from board members, or? Let's see. All right, there is a question. Is the Meditech, so the question from Francisco, is the Meditech facility at Louderbrook currently occupied?
As far as I know, the Meditech property, yes, it's in use.
All right. Any other questions or?
I know. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just had a quick question on the definitions. When you read the medical center or clinic definition and then the Office of Healthcare Professional, at the end of healthcare professional, it says, but excluding offices within medical centers or clinics. What does that mean?
Oh, that's trying to distinguish between the two different definitions, just to kind of clarify. So if a medical center or clinic that is, that's different, that's a higher intensity. Okay. So that was the Office of Healthcare Professional was for the smaller on-site offices. So we were just trying to make clear so that a medical center wouldn't try to go in under an office of a healthcare professional, because that's
Right.
allowed in a lot more places.
Okay, thank you.
And I know we were still working on like a kind of FAQ or tip sheet, a cheat sheet to go along with this. I had just worked on a draft yesterday that I sent out to the working group. I know they probably didn't have a chance to look at it just yet. It was kind of long, so I was hoping they could take a look at it and shorten it and make that a little easier to read, so that you know, after this meeting and once we publicize this, I want to be able to get that out at the same time, so we can do a little bit more education, so we have that available at the same time. And I'd like that to have ready when we go, when I put it in the newspaper, I'll put it on the website and I can put that information out there too.
So I'll just have just some comments. I think it was the two most helpful slides there. I think the one that just shows the two districts on the map, and basically it's hospitals go here and substance abuse goes here. I think that is that cuts to the chase, you know, like that's kind of the location of these things. And then the slide that describes the requirements, there's kind of all the approvals that kind of lays out, you know, what does it mean? Like, because one of the big questions that always came up was, you know, is we're trying to get control, we're trying to maintain control, and we're not trying to open the floodgates. And so there's kind of a slide there which indicates all of the levels of approval that are necessary. And I think those are probably the two most, to me, the most effective things that I see up there. And just the process definitely it illustrates that going through that map of like narrowing it down, kind of eliminating the residential districts and coming to this simple conclusion of where the two things go. Very, very helpful. Also the showing how the terms are condensed, another useful, very good graphic to illustrate, because a lot of questions came up about what does this really mean? Like why are we changing healthcare professional? How are the differences here? And I think that visually ties it together and shows kind of what's going on here. So I think this is a great amount of work that's been done in a short amount of time. And I thank Mr. Gotti and Mr. Path for their work on this, and all of the advisory committee people who worked on this. This is a really constructive effort. Thank you.
I think the thing, Dave, that it was really helpful about it is that you're taking this from the notion of, you know, this group is sort of inside baseball and is much more familiar and conversant with the issues and the definitions and all the rest of it. Whereas, you know, the public who doesn't think about this stuff most of the time just needs to have it be able to be really clear and easy to understand. And is there an issue? Yes, there's an issue. Do we agree that? Great. Do we agree we want to maintain control of the issue? Yes, we do. Okay, well, given that, what are the options? And what are the things we should be talking about related to the options? And that was why having that really diverse group with all the questions that they asked, because they asked many of the questions that we will hear in the future. And it allowed us to be able to create that as a really easy walkthrough. And so I'm glad people found it helpful.
I think you
I have
guys
a
did a
question
great
for
job.
Pat, if I could. Pat, because there's two separate AROs, will we have a problem with the AG in terms of putting it in one ARO?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Pardon me.
Because we have two separate ARO districts.
Areas, yes.
So will there be a problem?
I don't think so, but I need to look at it closer. The big thing is you're not discriminating against people. That's where towns get in trouble, where they try to say you can't do this anywhere. That's when those kind of things get struck down. You're not doing that. What they're proposing is you can do this here, and here is a pathway to do it.
Okay.
So that helps. That helps it get it through.
It's
Attorney
being
General
done.
review.
It's being done by the creation of an overlay district.
Right.
So that's how you're able to delineate one ARO from another.
Right.
So that's
okay.
And the short answer is that's how we can do it.
Okay. Thank you.
And the properties we chose for the new overlay district are fairly large. So we thought you know, if this is approved and goes through the process, it goes to the Attorney General. It's a, you know, they see the map and they can see that it's not, it may only be 2 parcels, but they're 2 large parcels that could reasonably accommodate those uses. So that's what we had also talked about with the working group, was that if one of those uses were proposed land-wise, it could fit there.
And they have, the other thing they look at is access to get to those areas. Both of those areas have good access to get to them. So, yeah, I want to study it a little further, but right now I don't have concerns. I reserve the right to dig a little deeper. But thank you for asking.
Deb, one great example of the types of questions related to the 2 AROs, right, was somebody on the panel said, you know, if you considered the one on East Street, well, there's already so much traffic at rush hour on East Street that if you had, you know, emergency vehicles trying to get through there to get to a location, you know, it would just bring everything to a standstill. So there were really good questions raised by the participants. And all of that led to the good discussion that led to this recommendation and the overlay recommendation.
All right, thank you. Thank you again. Is there any further discussion on this item, or ready to submit the legal application and all? All right. Let's see, the only other zoning article, it's a housekeeping thing, right? Which is more of a placeholder. I assume did we found
right. Actually, Joe pointed out some wrong numbering. From a couple years ago, we changed some section numbers. So I'll get that in the legal advertisement. But housekeeping is generally for if there's just kind of Scrivener's errors, you know, correcting numbers, but no substantive changes. So it can't be anything that changes the meaning.
Okay, there's another question in the Q&A. Is this property being considered for drug rehab? Westwood Executive Center, 200 Louderbrook Drive. Also, lots of space at both 100 and 200 Louderbrook are listed for lease. So I guess the question, I don't know. Is it included in the ARO? Yes, it's a part of the overlay district, right? But we don't know. Does anyone here have any information about it? Anything being proposed?
I haven't been contacted, so I'm not aware of anything.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, what has been happening around the state is that the drug and substance rehab facilities have been kind of like picking off nursing homes that have closed, that are zoned generally for medical care, and trying to open facilities, and towns are trying to prevent that. And I don't remember the name of the case, but it's the Millbury case, where I think they put a drug rehab like pretty close to a school, and Millbury could do nothing to stop it. So that's kind of been their market approach from what I've seen and what I've heard from other lawyers around the state. Those facilities are certainly not closed nursing home facilities that need rehabilitation, of physical rehabilitation.
All right, let's see, moving on then. The next item is other business on the agenda. Abby, what summary of conflict of interest law? Do you want to, or Pat?
Oh, yes, I sent you all, or it was included in your packet, the summary of the conflict of interest law. Everyone should read that, and then you can either sign the form at the back, or you could email the town clerk, Dottie Powers, acknowledging that you received that. And then every 2 years, board members have to complete, and employees have to complete the online training. So if you can do that, I know some of the timing of you all, I'm not sure what it is, but it's every 2 years. So if you got an email directly from the town clerk, that must mean your time is up. It's time for you to do that. if you go through that online test, it'll give you a certificate at the end. So you can either send that to me to send to Dottie, or you could send it to directly to Dottie Powers for her files.
Abby, is there anything that was satisfied by the open meeting violation training that we were asked to take? And I'm not sure who did it. I know I participated back in August, I believe, or September. But was that any? I'm just bringing it up because you brought up training.
Right. I know I did that. It was different, right? It was a different training.
It wasn't conflict of interest. It was
Okay.
open meeting.
Oh yeah, right. Right. That was the open meeting one.
So all of you who were on the board at that time agreed to take a training course. If you could just identify when you took that training course in an email to me or to Abby, who'll send it to me, it would be most helpful.
But this is a separate, there's actually a test right at the end of this, and then you take the test and print the certificate.
Yeah, it's a multi-choice test.
Yeah, but the open meeting was a condition from the complaint.
Abby, do you need me to resend you anything? I think I sent you right after I took that.
Yes, I got Rob's and I sent that to Dottie Powers.
Well, you took
Rob and I were in the same one.
Yeah.
But I'll say I'd have to go back and find out what date that was. But
Oh, okay, the open meeting one.
I sent you the conflict of interest one.
Right.
But I think I had sent you after I did the one that Chris and I were in together.
Right, in September, I think it was. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
you
check.
got mine too. Abby, you got my the open meeting law thing too. I sent you.
Okay, I think I did. I'll make sure I get those. I'll check my emails and get that to Pat.
No hurry.
Let's see. So the next item, meeting minutes. Do we have any? We have meeting minutes from December 15th. Any changes or proposals on those?
I was not able to read them, so I would abstain from voting on it.
And Mike was not here, so the three of us can vote on them, or we can postpone to next meeting.
I had no changes. W?
All right, so
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from December 15th, 2020 as submitted.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. We will have Mr. Path.
Abstain.
Ms. Conant.
Yes.
Mr. Gotti.
Yes.
Mr. McCusker. I think you're abstaining, and I vote yes as well. So three yes, 2 abstentions.
I apologize. Yes, I abstain.
All right, that's the meeting minutes from 12:15. See, we also had on the agenda a review of upcoming zoning board of appeals applications. Abby, do you want to tell us what the ZBA has going?
Right. At the zoning board's meeting next week, they have an application you might be interested in commenting on. They have a special permit for the ground mounted solar at a property on Grove Street. They're proposing ground solar in their yard. I thought you'd be interested since, the last couple months during your.
No, it's Gay Street. It's not Grove Street. That was the.
Oh, Gay Street. Sorry. Yep. 493 Gay Street. That's it. Over the last couple months, you had talked about, with the comprehensive plan and in the sustainability section, a lot of support for renewable energy. And this application calls for proposing solar a special permit with the zoning board of appeals. So if you have any comments, we could get those in writing to the zoning board for the hearing next week.
I just had trouble with those particular documents in the packet.
Uh-huh.
I had,
Couldn't open them either.
I couldn't open them, so I can't.
Oh, okay.
Says the website crashed or something or other.
Okay, yeah, when I uploaded them, it said something was with the file, maybe it,
Yeah, I tried both opening it through the split view as well as downloading the file itself, and the file won't open with Acrobat, even though it indicates it's a PDF. So there's something up with the file itself.
Oh, I see. Is that the plot plan? Because what was on the website was I could see in the.
right. So there was a link to the zone. I think maybe I sent in your packet a link to the zoning board's webpage where they have their projects. And then I uploaded them today or yesterday to your
Just share
packet.
your screen. If you have access to them, why don't you share the screen so we can see them?
Yes, good idea.
Yeah, I think I must have opened what you sent before. So.
Oh, you know what? It's doing the error here too. Let me see. Oh, let me see.
That's really strange because I looked at this earlier. I mean, I saw it a couple of times, and the first time it had a locus map that was very outdated and showed like the Pine Hill School on it, and then it was updated and showed a Google map with better locations and everything.
Pine Hill School.
Yeah, and Milk Street was not on the map, so like, was it from like 100 years ago or something? I don't know.
Yeah, the file wasn't opening from my desktop either. So I'm, even though I opened it earlier today, so I'm just trying to go to the zoning boards.
Yeah, if you just go to the town website, right, this should be on the ZBA's.
Yeah, are you able to see this now? I have it open on mine. Can you see this?
No.
All right, let me. All right. How about now?
Yes.
That's great.
So this is Gay Street here, and they're proposing it in the front yard here.
Can you show the locus?
So it looks like it might be up in this area.
Yes.
Yeah, the general locus, it's between Milk Street and Gay Farm Way, right?
Yeah, it's only
Okay.
about 4 properties up from Milk Street, going towards Gay Farm Way.
This isn't the house that was slated to be torn down that came before the planning board 5, 6
No,
years ago.
About 2 properties back towards Milk Street on the same side.
Yeah, so if you zoom in a little on the photograph up there, maybe that's. So I mean, I looked at this.
I know what Chuck said is.
It's 104 feet setback from the road, so it's on the south side of Gay Street. And basically the ground-based array is in that sort of patch of lawn there, I think, or maybe up against the tree line there. So,
So this isn't visible from the street, given all those trees?
I don't think it'll be invisible, but it's not something that would stand out, I don't think.
They're also not going to have a lot of time during the day without shadows, given the height of those trees.
Well, it's The house is actually south of the array, so
Right. The house will cast a shadow also, especially in the winter when the sun is lower.
you've got a 38 feet from the house to the array, and then 104 feet to the roadway. So it's, I'm sure they had to get, they had to assess, like, you know, if it would produce enough to be.
Yeah. I'm sure it's cost effective for them to still do it. How high off the ground are they? 4 feet, 1 inch?
What it looks like.
Yep. 18 inches at the minimum and 4 feet at the max height.
So they'll be facing south, so the 18 inches will be facing the road. The road won't see the 18 inches. The 4 feet will be facing the road.
Correct.
Just curious why they're not putting them on the house.
Maybe the slope of the roof is not conducive to that. Yeah, see what kind of roof they have.
Yeah, I think that's a different, that picture there is a different house. The house is oriented north to south. Like, yeah, in this drawing here, I believe, so if you look at that,
Yeah, they have hip roofs. Yeah.
There's not.
So it doesn't, most of the roof is east-west, the usable. Only on the back, the bottom part would be southern facing that they could point. Yeah, right there. Everything else is east, west, or north. So, Abby, you're asking if we have any comments
Yeah.
to.
Do you have any specific
to-
comments that you like to submit, you know, as the planning board to the zoning board?
I guess my first thought was, why didn't you put in the backyard? There appears to be an equal amount of open space in the backyard versus the front, which is closer to the street. So I'm just wondering, it seems like it would have been shielded from public view more in the backyard. I don't know what the grade of the land is there. Maybe that's not hospitable to something like this. I don't know, but it also may be they want to use their backyard as a backyard, and they're not using the front yard for anything, so they might as well throw it up there. I don't know.
If it has to go in the front, they should have appropriate shading from the other abutters. I don't know what the shading is like now in terms of,
Yeah, it's a good point. If they're deciduous trees, you'll see it for 6 months of the year. If they're all pine, then it's pretty protected visually.
I drove by it the other day. I mean, you can see the home at this time of year, so you will be able to see the panels. But again, you'd have to be looking for it.
But you could really, you could just put a 4-foot hedge.
You could.
Right in front of it, just on the street. That way, from the street, all you're looking at is a hedge. And then the house is still another 40 feet beyond it.
Right.
Or so. Just, that might be something.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask for some screening from the street of the array.
How wide is this thing, this array? I'm not looking at the picture anymore. I don't know how wide it is.
It's not before you to start talking about it, and the applicant's not here.
That's
so
true.
Yeah.
No, I know.
I urge
we
you
have
to.
We have no power over it.
Right, I think it's.
Abby asked you if you have comments for the zoning board of appeals. Why don't you limit your comments to that? With all due respect.
Noted.
Yeah, I would just comment, like Abby had said, that it's consistent with our comprehensive plan is wanting to promote adoption of renewable energy, and you know, it is not a you know, to me it looks like a reasonable arrangement. It makes sense the where it's located, and you know, I wouldn't personally. I don't see any reason to change anything.
Right. Generally, I'd say when we review, you know, applications to provide comments to the zoning board, one thing is to kind of take a holistic approach and look at the big picture and ask how it relates to the comprehensive plan, what we just completed. And I think this is consistent because we talked a lot about solar and trying to promote solar at commercial properties, but also residential properties that so this is, in my opinion, consistent with the work that you just did over the last 2 years.
So I think we can just pass along those comments. I mean, it's really, yeah, it's not under our purview, you know, like we don't, the zoning bylaws don't bring it to us. They send it to the ZBA, and we did change the zoning bylaws like 3 or 4 years ago. There used to be a requirement, there used to be a distinction between commercial solar and residential solar, and now we've changed the bylaws so that you can put anything on your roof. It doesn't matter how large the energy, you know, we eliminated this sort of arbitrary energy requirement. So ground-based, though, requires a zoning board of appeals review. So right now, the planning board doesn't have any, you know, it doesn't review this, but we can say it's definitely holistically, it's the kind of thing I would like to see more people doing, consistent with our comprehensive plan.
But I think also at the same time, we could suggest they ask for screening from the street. I don't think that's out of line.
If it's something they hadn't thought of to ask, no harm in bringing it up. They can still say, no, thanks. We're good.
So basically, that's a comment from us, but
Okay.
you know, it is that's on the ZBA to put that forward, because they're not before us. So
Right.
Yep.
nothing further to add from me.
All right, anything else? Do we need a vote or anything for this, or are we consensus enough to Abby to just pass along the comments of consistent with the comprehensive plan and maybe suggest screening if it's a big concern for people who go to the hearing?
Sure. I'll get that to the zoning board.
All right. Do we have anything else on the agenda? I don't see anything else on the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Gotti and Mr. Paff, seconds to adjourn. Seeing no discussion, all those will vote, roll call vote. Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Ms. Conant? Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, and we are adjourned.